Ready?
Bob!
Is there anything I can get for you, John?
No. Thanks.
You sure there isn't something you'd like?
No! Not a thing.
Are you worrying about that letter from the office? All right, dear. Just call if you want anything.
Coronary closure. A good rest. Everything will be all right. Don't worry. Don't worry.
It's very easy for him to say. But what about my business?
Oh, hello, Doctor.
Hello, Helen. How's John feeling?
Grumpy as a bear.
How are you, John?
Hiya, Doc.
Well, still grumbling, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Helen. John, the laboratory and other tests, the electrocardiogram, and this examination shows that you're making good progress. Excellent progress.
Oh, that's what you said last week and the week before. Sure, I'm making progress, but I've got to be back at the office.
John, I know you've been away for a few months, but you can soon pick up where you left off. And probably live a perfectly normal, happy, useful life. But you're going to have to play the game with a new set of rules.
Now, what do you mean, a new set of rules?
Well, they're not really new. They're just plain, common, everyday horse sense. You admit that you had been overworking and worrying a lot before you played that match. If anybody asked for trouble, you did. You were a good athlete in your day. You remember what a tough grind it was training for months just for a few short hours of competition? Then, after a race or a game, all you needed was a little rest to be as good as new again. That's because a young heart recovers quickly. It returns to normal action in a very short time. You see, at our age, we begin to lose some of that elasticity, that ability to recover quickly and fully, just as a rubber band loses some of its snap when it gets older. The toughest job people our age have is to quit trying to keep up with the young Joneses in their hearts. That old time-worn expression, be your age, really applies to all of us. And you too, Helen.
Yes, but who wants to go through life nursing a temperamental heart?
John, do you realize that in this country of 140 million people, it's difficult to find a perfect physical specimen? Just look around you. You'll find millions of Americans wearing glasses. These people have learned to make the best of imperfect sight. In industry all over the country, you'll find many difficult operations performed by sightless people. And think of these same people learning to read with their fingertips. What about the many thousands of Americans who are going about their daily work using hearing aids? And the many thousands who have learned to talk with their hands in place of the vocal cords which have failed them. And the hundreds of thousands of diabetics, insulin users, who have lived normal lives with lazy glands. When you get to feeling particularly sorry for yourself, look in on some of our boys back from the front and see how they're getting back into the swing of things. And here you are, with all your senses and limbs intact, grumbling like a schoolboy who's been taken out of a football game. Why, you're only one of about 4 million Americans with imperfect hearts, many of them living comfortable, happy, useful lives right now because they're cooperating with their doctors and giving their hearts a chance. In fact, many of them may live as long as they could expect to live without heart trouble.
I seem to hear more about heart trouble lately than ever before. It must be on the increase, isn't it?
You're right, Helen. It's our #1 health problem. But this increase applies mostly to people in the middle and older age groups. You see, immunization against such diseases as diphtheria has increased the lifespan so that more youngsters grow up into the older age groups. Also, doctors are now able to diagnose and classify heart disease with greater and greater accuracy. Among younger people, the majority of cases of heart disease is caused by rheumatic fever, which still remains one of the major public health problems in this group. But proper treatment and convalescence is doing a great deal to hold down the damage to these young, growing hearts. Medical science is making progress, using new surgical methods and new drugs. For instance, there is one type of heart infection in young adults which, until recently, was almost 100% fatal. But now, with proper use of penicillin, the great majority of these patients recovers completely. You must remember that the heart has tremendous reserve power. It's an amazingly efficient pump, yet it's no bigger than the size of a fist. It pumps tons of blood daily to and from every part of the body. The normal pumping action of the heart is a continuous series of beats and rests. Beat, rest, beat, rest, beat, rest, beat, rest. Pushing the blood through miles of blood vessels at the rate of about 70 times per minute, while the valves inside the heart open and close with every beat. A graph of the heart action shows that the heart gets very little rest, only a fraction of a second during each heartbeat. During unusual physical exertion or emotional stress, it may beat twice as fast. And the faster it beats, the harder it works and the less time it has to rest. But when you're taking it easy, your heart takes it easy and rests nearly twice as much as it works. And that's why doctors advise plenty of sleep and rest for the protection of the middle-aged healthy heart and the care of the sick heart. You can go right on enjoying life, but you've got to stick to the rules of moderation in your work and play, in eating, smoking, and in holding down excitement.
It's easy enough for you to give out the advice, Doc, but you don't have to take it.
Do you remember when I turned over my practice to Dr. Foster about 2 years ago to take a long vacation? That was no vacation. I was recuperating from a heart attack, just like yours. I had to learn the hard way, too.
Well, that's hard to believe. Why, I've seen you playing golf and, well, and dancing and...
Sure, that's right. You've seen me playing golf. 9 holes or less if I got tired. And you've seen me dancing, too. Marion and I enjoy it a lot. A nice, slow waltz. But when it comes to that jitterbug stuff, we just sit it out. Fun to watch, but it's for younger and stronger hearts. So you see, John, I'm taking the same medicine I'm prescribing for you. And what's more, I'm enjoying it. I don't have to pretend that I'm 16 anymore. And what a relief that is. But you still have to get rid of a lot more weight. Less work for the ticker. Well, so long, John. You can drop in to see me now.
But, Doc, when can I go back to work?
I beat you to it, John. I've already talked to the office. They know you'll be back to the office next Monday. For an hour or two. How's that?
For further information concerning the heart diseases, consult your physician, your local heart association, or the American Heart Association, New York 19, New York.
This isn't a very unusual scene. You've probably been to parties like this yourself. Lots of them. A bunch of us kids get together at somebody's house every now and then, and there's music and dancing and just general fun. The only thing different about this particular party was what happened to spoil the good time everyone was having. It all began when the telephone rang, and Susan went to answer it.
Hello? Yes, this is Susan. Wait a minute, will you? I can't hear a thing. Hey, Jerry, I'm on the phone.
Oh, all right.
Thanks.
Yeah. Hey, who cut the music?
Jerry. Now, what did you say? When? Who was driving? How bad was he hurt?
Somebody got hurt.
Well, thanks for calling. Oh, yeah, some of them are here. Sally, Jack, and you know, the gang. I thought Bob and Ted would be here, too. I bet they wish now they had come. Yeah. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye. Well, who was that?
Oh.
It was Betty. She and Dan were on the way to the movies when they saw this accident. It was Bob and Ted.
Hey, Bob and Ted have been in an accident?
Were they hurt? Bob and Ted didn't get hurt. It was someone else, a pedestrian. Bob was driving and Ted was with him.
Gosh, I'll bet they feel awful.
They ought to. The police found a bottle in the car.
Oh, brother, they're really in trouble.
Well, it serves them right. Anybody that'd be dumb enough to drink.
Nobody should drink and drive.
I mean, there's no excuse for drinking under any conditions. That's just what I've always thought. Drinking's just about the worst thing you can do.
Hey, now, wait a minute. Who said anything about drinking? I thought all you said was they found a bottle in the car. Was there anything said about whether Bob and Ted had been drinking or not?
Betty didn't say that.
Yeah, it looks like you're pretty quick to condemn Bob and Ted. I thought they were your friends.
I'm not either condemning them. I'm condemning drinking. That's what I said.
You did not. You said anybody that would drink at all, didn't she? And we were all talking about Bob and Ted, and that's who you were talking about, too.
Yeah, Sally, how come you say that? You're prejudiced.
I am not prejudiced. It's a fact. Alcohol is poison, and you know it.
Hey, now, wait a minute. Let's not get all riled up about this.
Well, she started it. Some of us don't feel the same about drinking as she does, and she knows it. She's just trying to find an excuse to tell us what we ought to do.
Oh, you make me so mad. I guess what you mean is you just... Sally, don't get mad. Jack didn't mean anything. Gosh, how did we get off on this anyway? Well, that's what I say.
Well, if people are friends, they ought to be able to talk about something without everybody blowing their tops.
Gosh, yes, Sally. I'm sorry. I didn't really mean to hurt your feelings. You see it one way and I see another.
Well, now, that's more like it. Now, come on, Sally. Jack said he was sorry, so let's just forget it.
Well, okay. But I still don't agree with him. I still think drinking is wrong.
Well, that depends, Sally. Jack's not asking you to change your mind. After all, we just
No, but tell me one thing. What's so wrong with drinking? What have you got against it?
Well, in the first place, everybody knows it doesn't do you any good. It can ruin your health.
Is that what you believe? Do you believe that old scare stuff? Pooey.
Well, maybe you're both right. A lot of people drink occasionally, but I guess it could really fix you if you concentrate on it.
Sure, just like a lot of things. Pickles. You can't say pickles by themselves are bad for you, but if you eat too many, you get sick. It's the same thing with drinking. You drink so much that you don't get the vitamins and stuff you need, and wham, you get liver trouble or something. All I can say is alcohol can't be as bad as some people think it is. My folks don't think it's poison either. Why, you should have heard what my dad had to say about this the other day. We got to talking about alcohol.
You see, Jack, an occasional drink never hurt anyone. Sure, liquor can cause you plenty of trouble. It'll make you drunk if you drink too much of it. And I think it's criminal if anybody drives after he's been drinking. But let me tell you something. A drink before dinner in the evening is just about the best thing I know of to settle your nerves and give you an appetite. My father always had it around the house, and we've had it. And I don't object to your taking a drink once in a while, but I just don't want to ever hear of your being drunk.
And my dad wouldn't tell me I could drink a little if I wanted to. Not if it's as dangerous as you seem to think it is.
How do you know you won't get drunk?
Look, I'm no baby. I know what I can do and what I can't do, even with drinking.
Oh, I've heard that before. Anybody that drinks will talk like that.
That's just the kind of talk that'll get you in trouble. If you don't think alcohol will hurt you physically, what about the way you're likely to act? You can't say it doesn't affect your actions. And I know somebody who'd back me up on that. Reverend Brewster. He was talking about it recently at young people's meeting in the church.
I believe in freedom for young people. You should make your own decisions, but only in the light of all available facts. And I don't see how anyone who knows and understands all the facts can condone the use of alcohol. It is a question of right or wrong. For the things people do when they have taken alcohol are not directed by the clearest thinking and the most conscientious judgment. Spiritual values and human dignity are forgotten. That's why the use of alcohol is wrong.
And that settles it for me. As far as I'm concerned, it's wrong. Well, Sally, I go to church too. And in my church, they don't say it's wrong to use alcohol. Whether you drink or whether you don't drink is up to you. Getting drunk is something else again.
Well, how do you feel about drinking, Susan?
Actually, I don't care one way or the other. Drinking just doesn't interest me. My folks serve drinks once in a while. They never told me that I couldn't drink. I'm just not interested. But it's all right with me if other people want to. That is, if they behave themselves.
What about the people who become alcoholic? Doesn't that bother you, Susan? Why, these alcoholics, they...
If you mean my dad, go ahead and say it. Sure, he's an alcoholic. Everybody knows it. I'm used to it. When a member of your family gets that way, you try and hide it at first, but you can't. You might as well face it. When Dad found out what was wrong with him and started taking treatment, our whole family got educated. Dr. Brune spent a lot of time helping me to understand. We had a long talk about people like my dad.
Alcoholism is a kind of illness that affects different types of people. We're not entirely sure why some people who drink become alcoholics and others do not. We do know that most alcoholics can be helped and recover through proper treatment. Your father's illness involves more than just his use of alcohol. Most drinkers can control their drinking. Alcoholics cannot. Your father is one of them.
My father's just one of those people who couldn't control his drinking.
Then I think you'd be afraid to drink.
Just because my dad's an alcoholic doesn't mean I'm going to be one. You don't inherit alcoholism, according to Dr. Brune. No, sir. That's not going to keep me from going along with the gang.
That's what I say. If you want to be one of the gang, you've got to act like one of the gang. You don't want people to think you're a square, do you?
Do you mean to say you think you have to drink?
No, but...
I don't drink, and I get along all right with the gang.
Sure, but
Take this gang here. We have a lot of fun when we're together, but my folks would take a dim view of my coming if there was drinking.
There are plenty of guys who have a drink with their families, but when they get outside the house, they drink deliberately, just to get high and put on an act. I think that's what our parents are concerned about, as much as anything.
You're the only one, Jerry, who hasn't stated his opinion. Haven't you got anything to say?
Well, yeah, boy, everybody else put in his 2 cents. How come you're holding out?
I'm not holding out. I'm just listening.
Well, come on, let us in on it. How do you feel about drinking?
Well, now, that's a pretty hard question to answer.
Why? Nobody else seemed to have any trouble, although we don't all agree.
Say, you know, that reminds me of...
A hard question to answer. The kids don't realize it, but this is the first time we've really said what we think about drinking. Listening to what all of them think and believe, I'm not exactly sure where I stand. With most things, there's a hard and fast rule. Either they're right or they're wrong. And most everybody agrees as to which is which. But drinking, who is right? Sally? We all know where she stands and her reasons.
I think it's wrong. I believe what Reverend Brewster says. I think drinking is wrong for anybody.
On the other hand, Jack's opinion doesn't seem too unreasonable.
And my dad says a drink now and then never hurt anybody. And I think if you want to be one of the gang, you've got to act like one of them.
And Tom, although his father's an alcoholic, he doesn't seem to be afraid of becoming one himself.
The chances of being an alcoholic don't worry me. Some people can drink and some can't. You can't blame it all on alcohol.
Susan doesn't seem to be for either side, but she did bring up a point.
In my church, they don't say the use of alcohol is wrong in itself. Personally, I don't care one way or the other about drinking. But it's all right with me if other people want to. That is, if they behave themselves.
Some of the kids feel you've got to drink to be one of the gang.
That's what I say. If you want to be one of the gang, you've got to act like one of the gang. You don't want people to think you're a square, do you?
Do you mean to say you think you have to drink? I don't drink, and I get along all right with the gang.
Well, I think our parents are concerned mainly about kids who drink deliberately, to get high and put on an act.
It's not a simple question, is it? There seem to be many different opinions, even among our own gang. Each one of us must make up his own mind. It isn't easy. What do you think? What about drinking?
The threat of disaster is never pleasant. For a long time, schools have been improving ways of protecting children from the kinds of disasters and accidents we have come to expect. These safety measures, however, we are threatened with a new form and magnitude of disaster. For this is the age of the atom. So long as we are confronted with this unprecedented threat, Protection of our children must be a basic goal of every educational program. We can achieve this a comprehensive civil defense program in all of our schools. Protection from nuclear attack is possible. Local conditions will dictate the courses of action. There is a general concept for every school system to follow in developing a civil defense program. First of all, the general objectives and main features of the plan must be carefully worked out by the superintendent for presentation to the school board.
We presented Go at your meeting, and I need hardly tell you that this proposal to expand our school protection program was worked out with the close cooperation of Mr. Miller, our city civil defense director. The program consists of two main parts: protection to take care of our immediate survival needs, and a curriculum program to include civil defense in our... Before I describe in detail...
In this meeting, the superintendent is seeking the board's approval of the general proposal. Before he can proceed with a more detailed plan, the board must endorse the proposal and authorize funds for development and implementation of the plan.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. The board has already studied the outline of this proposal that you gave us last week. Those in favor of proceeding with a more detailed plan? Aye. Opposed? Carried. And now I think we should review...
A few days later, the superintendent meets with his staff and all principals to explain the new directive and to make specific assignments for detailed planning. The curriculum coordinator heads the curriculum committee. The safety supervisor is appointed chairman of the protection committee. The school architect engineer is made chairman of the fallout shelter committee. Many others, such as the chief school nurse and the head building custodian, are assigned responsible positions. Everyone on the staff has an important role. The Civil Defense Director is present to explain how the schools fit into the total community survival plan. Principals are charged with full responsibility for developing and executing both the protection and curriculum programs in their own schools, programs which will conform with those established for the entire system. Before calling a meeting of the entire staff, principals in turn discuss the program with some of their key people. The school's safety supervisor is appointed as the civil defense coordinator, and teachers serving on the curriculum committee are told to prepare for special meetings to find ways of building civil defense into the courses of study. One of the first steps in developing the protection program is to decide on the best and most economical ways of providing shelter from radioactive fallout. With the aid of the local civil defense director, the school superintendent and his architect engineer make detailed plans for including dual-purpose fallout shelters in all new school construction. Plans are approved, funds obligated, and the real work gets underway. When this shelter is completed, it will also serve as the school cafeteria. Existing school buildings throughout the system are surveyed to determine what areas within them are best adapted for shelter use or for ready conversion to shelters. This area, for instance, was formerly used for coal storage, but now it serves as both fallout shelter and workroom for school theatrical productions. This school needed more classroom space. But to add it above ground would have taken away valuable playground area. The problem was solved by building dual-purpose shelter classrooms underground according to specifications furnished by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization. Alternate plans for evacuating the schools in target areas are also developed. If there is enough advanced warning of an attack, civil defense plans in many target cities call for sending children home from school. Some target cities, such as this one, if there is adequate warning time, plan a general evacuation to safer areas. With the help of the local civil defense director, the school superintendent makes certain that arrangements for evacuating schools in his system are coordinated with those already established for the community at large. Cooperative arrangements must also be made between school and local government officials at reception areas. Development of an adequate internal warning system for the schools also is carefully worked out to supplement existing civil defense warning facilities. This community has a good outdoor warning system with sirens covering the entire area. Everyone here knows that the alert signal, a steady blast of from 3 to 5 minutes duration, means to take action as directed by the local government. And that the take cover signal, a wailing tone or a series of short blasts of 3 minutes duration, signifying attack is imminent, means to take cover at once in the best available shelter. To supplement these outdoor signals, an indoor warning system is needed. Although there are other approved systems for instantaneous relay of warning, bell and lights are used here to alert the schools. Public address systems are installed so that emergency instructions can be given to the students and staff in the shortest possible time. Here's how the whole system works. When a warning is received by the local government through the attack warning system, sirens and bell and lights throughout the community are activated simultaneously. Every school in the system receives this signal. On receipt of the warning, the switchboard operator immediately informs the principal. Using the public address system, he gives appropriate directions to his staff and to the students. It cannot be stressed too strongly that any civil defense warning signal used in schools must be clearly distinguishable from other types of alarms. No survival plan for schools can be effective without the full cooperation of an informed staff. The importance of the role of teachers in conducting shelter drills, for instance, cannot be overemphasized. Calm efficiency of their teachers, youngsters gain confidence in arrangements made for their security. While individual schools may have different requirements, all must hold periodic drills to assure immediate response to warning signals. An adequate school fallout shelter should contain enough provisions to sustain students and staff for at least 2 weeks. In this combination shelter cafeteria, the cafeteria manager is in charge of emergency feeding facilities. It must be stocked with blankets for everyone assigned to the shelter. If the school is dependent on a vulnerable community water system, a special well may have to be provided for emergency water supply. Battery-powered radios with Conelrad frequencies 640 and 1240 clearly marked on the dials must be available to receive emergency information. A telephone tied in with the city's Civil Defense Control Center. First aid and medical supplies. Sanitation facilities and means for safe disposal of rubbish and wastes. Radiological monitoring equipment. An emergency electric power generator. And adequate ventilation are among the special items which must be provided. Because children would need some form of recreation, an area within the shelter should be available for physical activities and play. Of course, if time would permit, they would be in their own shelters at home. While the protection program is taking shape, civil defense is introduced into the curriculum at all levels. This third grade class, for example, visits emergency facilities in the community, like the local fire station. Here they learn that the people who protect them every day are a vital part of civil defense. In this fifth grade class, children make posters on home preparedness. Gradually, an awareness develops that civil defense is as natural, as meaningful, and necessary as everyday safety rules. The conditions of survival are learned. Preparedness becomes a personal responsibility. Discussion of the effects of natural disasters leads to a realistic grasp of the consequences of a nuclear war. The objective of curriculum planning is to give each student a background in the needs and methods of civil defense so that he will be prepared for living in the nuclear age. Under the supervision of the school nurse, first aid courses are taught as a regular part of the physical education program. These young homemakers in the 10th grade are getting some first-hand tips from their cafeteria manager on ways of preparing food for large groups of people. They learn that there is a real relationship between good food and good morale. civil defense concepts should evolve naturally from existing subject matter, as in this 12th grade class in American government.
Authority and services. And if we were ever attacked, we would need more than ever the help and leadership of our governments. Most states and many localities have already adopted this program to help us recover and to preserve our constitutional government. The first point in this continuity of government program is to establish automatic lines of succession to important positions. In a serious disaster, many officials may be unable to...
This is a sound peculiar to our time. A sound that is meaningful to this 12th grade physics class studying the effects of radioactive fallout. These radiological defense instrument kits for use in science classes have been distributed to high schools throughout the nation by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization. From experiences like this, young people grow in their understanding of the problems they must face, of the responsibilities they must accept as citizens of the nuclear age. If it is to be a successful program in our schools, civil defense must also be understood and practiced in our homes.
Evacuation is vitally important to everyone. We have been talking about some of the precautions schools are taking to protect our children and to help them meet the challenge of our times. But I want to stress that it's just as important that we carry this knowledge, these preparations, into the home. Let's take a look at some of the things that we as parents and as citizens are obligated to know. Warning signals and what they mean. Your community plan for emergency action. Protection from radioactive fallout through shelter. First aid and home emergency preparedness. Use of Conrad 640 or 1240 on your AM radio for official directions. And these are some of the things that we must do. Prepare a family fallout shelter and equip it with 2 weeks' supply of food and water, a first aid kit, and a battery-operated radio. Since we are in a target area, prepare an evacuation kit for your automobile. Include a supply of food and water, a first aid kit, a battery radio, and blankets. First, let's talk about the family fallout shelter. This is a model of one of the types of family shelters recommended by the Office of Civil and Defense Mobilization. It is best suited...
The protection of our families at home and in schools is basic to the success of any community or national survival program. For the sake of clarity, let's review some of the steps in preparing a school civil defense program. After outlining a general plan with the help of the local civil defense authority, the superintendent makes his proposal to the school board. With the board's approval, he calls a meeting of his staff and principals to explain the new policy. Starting with the emergency plan, a shelter program is developed under the supervision of the architect engineer who works with the civil defense director. If evacuation is called for in the community survival plan, school procedures are designed to conform with it. The entire school system is provided with a reliable warning system. Individual schools carry out their directives and refine their programs through regular drills and exercises. Following committee recommendations, the curriculum is modified to incorporate civil defense and survival techniques into the existing courses of study. and home preparedness is stressed as a necessary extension of the school survival program. Approaches to the development of school civil defense programs will necessarily vary according to local conditions. But if these guidelines are followed, while working closely with local civil defense officials, schools will be better prepared to meet any disaster. A nuclear war may never come, especially if we are prepared. But we cannot ignore the threat. The stakes are too high.
Don't be dead right. Mr. Smith may have been right. That's for the jury to decide. But the important fact is that he almost died. The growing trend toward urbanization with its resulting concentration of population in cars is making the pedestrian more vulnerable to accidents. With more traffic congestion, more people and more cars, the pedestrian must be doubly careful. The pedestrian's rights and duties must be clearly understood and obeyed. Too many adults are prone to think of the pedestrian safety rules as applying only to children. For instance, most adults know that to be safe, one must wait for the new green light. Yet time and again we'll disregard this safety rule because we're in a hurry and cross after the light has been burning green for some time, only to find ourselves stranded in the middle. Not only have we disobeyed a safety precaution and made ourselves vulnerable to an accident, but we have been discourteous to the drivers who are forced to wait. So if the signal is an old green when you arrive, wait until the cycle changes and proceed on the new green light. The same rule applies for the walk and wait or walk and don't walk type of signal. Yet how many times have you found yourself stepping off the curb on a don't walk signal and being forced to dodge the rushing traffic before reaching the safety of the sidewalk? Though most state laws provide the pedestrian safe passage even though the light has changed, only a fool would jeopardize his life by being careless. Generally, state laws recognize the pedestrian's right-of-way in marked and unmarked crosswalks. However, state laws differ, and it is advisable for pedestrians to acquaint themselves with local laws of their state. From a practical standpoint, even though you may have the right-of-way, the safest thing is to always use good judgment. After looking in all directions to make sure there is no immediate danger from the oncoming traffic, the pedestrian should proceed across the intersection using the crosswalk. When a vehicle is stopped for a pedestrian in a crosswalk, it can be assumed that other vehicles will also stop. But unless the pedestrian takes the precaution of looking in the direction of the oncoming traffic when abreast of the stopped car, he may be dead right. Another case where the pedestrian could be dead right is if he were foolish enough to step off the curb into the crosswalk, into the path of the oncoming vehicle, when the vehicle is so close that the driver wouldn't have time to yield or stop. Pedestrians must yield the right-of-way to vehicles when crossing at a place where there is no intersection. A jaywalker can never be dead right, but he most certainly can be dead wrong, and often is. In fact, crossing between intersections is one of the great causes of pedestrian fatality. In rural areas where there are no sidewalks, the pedestrian should walk on the left side of the road, facing traffic, staying as far off the road as possible. With the cost of transportation ever on the increase, many young people think they must resort to hitchhiking. Unfortunately, hitchhiking is undependable and can be dangerous, and in some states is against the law. One never knows if your benefactor is a safe driver and if his car is in good mechanical condition. In case of an accident, you may find you are not covered by insurance. From the driver's standpoint, picking up a passenger is undesirable too. If an accident occurs, the driver is responsible and may find he has a lawsuit on his hands. Many safety devices have been developed for pedestrian safety. The pedestrian overpass is one such device. It should be noted that the overpass is constructed only in places of extreme danger. Therefore, it is our duty as adults to use this device for our own safety and for the example we can set for children. Pedestrian attitude is an important safety factor. Too many adults dismiss pedestrian safety rules, thereby endangering themselves and the drivers. One such offender is the person who is so engrossed in what he is doing or so preoccupied with other thoughts that he completely disregards signal lights, crosswalks, and other safety devices. Alcohol and gasoline don't mix. Drinking and driving is a serious offense. But we don't give much consideration to drinking and walking. Yet statistically over the years, it has been proved that more pedestrians than drivers have had fatal accidents when under the influence of alcohol. The pedestrian who has been drinking is subject to the same problems as the driver. His inhibitory mechanism has been dulled. He has more assurance and less self-control. His judgment of speed and distance are impaired, and he takes chances he wouldn't ordinarily take. Unfortunately, he has no steel enclosure such as the driver to protect him. In case of an accident, his body takes the full impact of a collision, and he is often fatally injured. Walking at night can be doubly dangerous. To be on the safe side, pedestrians should wear or carry white and be bright for night. Many pedestrians do not drive and have never driven. They are unaware of the limitations of car and driver. They are not trained to judge speed and distance and are usually unaware of the minimum stopping distances of vehicles at given speeds. They are therefore more vulnerable to accidents than pedestrians who do drive. Another miscalculation of the non-driving pedestrian is that he doesn't realize that every car has blind spots, and though he can see the oncoming car, the driver may not be able to see him. If you can't see the eyes of the driver, you may be sure he can't see you. Statistically, 9 out of 10 pedestrians killed were non-drivers. This behooves every non-driving pedestrian to allow his calculations a large margin of safety when applying them to oncoming traffic. Nobody in their right mind plays Russian roulette, yet pedestrians play a game that is just as dangerous every time they dart out between two cars. This practice is suicidal because the pedestrian is often in front of the oncoming car before the driver has a chance to react to the danger. Unless the pedestrians are unusually agile, they will find they may be dead wrong. Stepping out of a car into the traffic side of the street without looking carefully is another version of the same game. Yet as drivers, we unconsciously do this when we park our car and change from the role of driver to that of pedestrian. It is a strange paradox that one moment we're the driver cursing the careless pedestrian, the next moment we're the pedestrian cursing the careless driver. No matter which side of the wheel we're on, we are prone to stand up for our rights, or what we feel are our rights, rather than being courteous and safe. We often put ourselves in the position of the boy who stood in the middle of the railroad tracks to stop the oncoming train, trusting to the skill of the engineer and the brakes of the locomotive. Such was the case with Mr. Smith. He was right, but he almost died. Think about it the next time you have the choice. Be courteous and smart. Don't be dead right.
A good place to live. But will it happen here? It can. Whenever the wind blows strong and dry, everything is ready. Home after home, row after row, roof after roof after roof, combustible. Fuel for fire. Overhangs almost touch. A community inviting disaster. A conflagration, fire running wild, causing untold damage to life and property, to homes and to dreams. It can happen wherever a large number of buildings is roofed with combustible wood shingles, homes or apartments, in hill country or flat. The terrain makes little difference. Whenever a strong wind blows, and strong winds blow everywhere. In California alone, disaster has struck already, too many times over the years. Fire can begin anywhere, inside or outside, oily rags, matches, a faulty chimney, a cigarette. Quickly, the smallest fire can turn into a major emergency. The first forces to arrive on the scene face heavy odds, too heavy. Firefighting forces must abandon an organized defense. All they can do is try to save individual homes. They leapfrog from one to another. Sometimes these tactics work, sometimes not. Then, everywhere, the fire breaks through, jumps overhead, igniting more and more roofs, and still more. Flaming brands fall like incendiary bombs anywhere, everywhere. New fires spring up among homes far apart. Often surrounding brush is untouched. The fire is now a holocaust with destructive powers beyond belief. Working against it, the most modern firefighting equipment, experienced and well-trained firemen, the most advanced firefighting techniques known, but it's still too little. Homes on fire are bypassed to try to save others. The best firemen, the best equipment aren't enough. How does a fire become an overhead conflagration? Need it happen? Could anything be done? Yes, something could be done. Aside from dry vegetation, water failure, the blistering wind, one of the common factors in airborne fire spread could easily be controlled, in fact eliminated. Combustible wood roofs. Let's look at tests of combustible roofing and of fire-resistant roofing, patterned after Underwriters Laboratories tests and conducted in a leading Western University laboratory. A panel of combustible heavy red cedar shakes is set in place for the intermittent flame test. Then the flame is turned on. A 1,300-degree flame, and blown over the panel at 12 miles per hour. Now the first minute of flame has blown over the wood roofing, and the flame is cut off. The wind will be kept blowing for the next 2 minutes. Next, a panel of fire-resistant asphalt shingle roofing is put to the test. Same size panel, same fire, same wind. To earn the coveted label of the underwriters' laboratories, roofing materials like electrical appliances must pass strict tests. One minute later, the flame is cut off. The engineer checks the results. In 2 minutes, the asphalt shingle panel is again exposed to the flame. The fire dies out in 5 seconds after the flame jet is cut off. Now the red cedar shake roofing panel undergoes its second minute of flame exposure. Flames would be inside a real house by now. Still burning after the flame jet is cut at the minute's end. And the asphalt shingle panel, as the flame jet is turned on for the third minute. "60 seconds later, the flame jet is cut, but the wind machine kept on. Until the fire extinguishes itself. This is what fire-resistant means. Now the red cedar panel burns again. Until the only way to put out the fire is to douse it with water. That panel was like a real roof. The test shows why it is hard for a fire department to stop a wood roof conflagration. In the Los Angeles conflagration of November 1961, at the fire's height, roofs often blazed up before anything else caught fire. As roofs ignited, flaming shingles and shakes shot aloft. The flaming fallout sown by burning brands landed on waiting targets 1.5 miles away. Not 1 or 2 fires, but 60 or 70. This is how it happened, how it could happen in hilly country anywhere. As fire reaches hilltop homes, shingles and shakes ignite. Flaming, they are carried aloft by hot updrafts created by the fire. The wind picks up the large, flat, light shingle brands as though they were kites. Pieces large enough to burn for minutes. Carries them for 1 mile and more, and drops them as flaming fallout on the homes below. The flaming brand threat is just as great in flat areas. A flat country fire can spread the same way. Like this. With high winds, and where roofs are made of fire-resistant materials, a fire spreads mainly from house to house sideways, not overhead. There is a definite battle line at which fire forces can take a stand. When homes with combustible roofs burn, next-door neighbors still are threatened, of course. But burning shakes and shingles take to the air. carried by the wind, they jump overhead to ignite other homes. One here, one there. Each the start of a new fire. The conflagration fans out. No battle line can be drawn. Need it have happened here? Is there any protection? Is there a choice? Let's take a look at our second scientifically controlled test, the burning brand test. Here is a test brand, as specified in the Class C burning brand test of the American Society for Testing and Materials. The brand is placed on another asphalt shingle roof panel. And the wind machine is turned on to create the 12-mile-an-hour breeze. Each brand is left in place to the end of the test. Each of the 4 brands used to test the asphalt shingle roofing burned or glowed for 6 to 8 minutes, then burned itself out. Only small spots of melted asphalt mark the place. Now, the same test for the red cedar shake roofing panel, but only one brand. And here are the exact words written down during the test by the engineer in charge. Burning brand applied, glowing brightly. "4 minutes. Brand burning, shake burning." "5 minutes. Flaming at joint, 2 inches from brand." 7 minutes. Brisk flame over 10-inch length of joint. 8 minutes. Flaming on underside. 11 minutes. Flaming briskly on underside, on top surface and along edge of panel. 14 minutes, burning briskly on top and bottom. And then the flames were extinguished with water. What do the fire tests prove? What choice do they offer? The impartial engineer in charge, Professor G.E. Troxell, concluded the 300-pound asphalt shingle roof panels passed the tests very successfully. But the red cedar shake roof panels would have burned completely if their fires had not been extinguished by water. That was the result of the tests. This is the result of a real conflagration. Is there any way to prevent conflagrations of this sort? What can one person do? Is there any guide to follow? Yes, the UL label is a guide. It identifies products with built-in safety and security. Roofing materials that bear the label offer safety to those who dwell beneath. Working to prevent conflagrations are organizations such as the National Fire Protection Association, which has drafted a roof safety ordinance for use everywhere. This is it. More than 600 cities have ordinances like this. You can choose either type of roofing for your home, combustible or fire resistant. One exposes you, your family, and your community to the danger of conflagration. The other will let you live and sleep with peace of mind. Take your pick. The choice is yours.
You know Clyde, or you know guys like him. Guys that are with him. You know what I mean? Clyde's sharp. Knows what he's doing. Oh, I don't mean he's Mr. Big or that he's anybody's boy. None of that jazz.
Safely does, even in the morning. And safely is the way you do it, even without warning. Safety isn't hard to know, sometimes just remembering to wear your hard hat and take your gloves out timbering. One thing that safety is doing what you told, or else the name of the game is never growing old. Cars and trucks and big machines require extra care, 'cause one mistake is all it takes to take you out of there. So listen while we tell you all about our Clyde and why we always call him Stateside Clyde, a groovy guy on anything. Stateside Clyde, a groovy guy on anything. Stateside Clyde, a groovy guy on anything. Stateside Clyde.
Watch Clyde. He's hip on safety all the time, no matter what he's doing. Safety is trying things out, not waiting till something breaks. He does just what the instructor said, not because somebody is watching, but because doing it that way is the safe side. That's why he stops and thinks safely. What about those wipers? That may be a little thing. But suppose those wipers didn't work right in the middle of a downpour. Safety is paying attention to a lot of little things. Another thing, Clyde puts away the loose stuff that might get in the way of his driving. Where machines and other people are concerned, Clyde is doubly on the safe side. Clyde puts the word on his buddies to cool it. Horsing around could ruin their day. So Clyde plays it on the safe side by watching out for the other guys. When Clyde took up driving, he took on a big job. While he's driving, Clyde won't let anything distract him. At least, not for long. Safety is paying attention so you can avoid accidents. Even on the open highway, Clyde watches his speed. Talking about speed, what about those guys who drive fast for a living? They gotta think safety. Let's ask Cale Yarborough, one of the best.
The most important thing about driving an automobile is to know what you're doing. To know your automobile, to know how it makes it work, and to know the limitations of this car, and also know your own limitations. Racing drivers know that winning races and staying alive is a matter of control. Having control is to be comfortable and to have your hands on the wheel in your right position. There's only one position, and that's the right position. And have them set this right.
In racing, professional drivers follow every rule of safety. Motorists, too, should observe the rules on the highway and in everyday traffic. When passing, a driver must first check behind him and in front to make sure the way is clear. In fact, street and highway driving is more dangerous than on the track, where the man behind the wheel is better trained and always plays it safe. The best drivers always think safety. Their windshields are kept clean, their tires are in A1 condition, and their brakes operate perfectly. Scarborough. On the track or on the highway, Cale avoids trouble by not taking chances and by thinking ahead.
In the job corps or out on the job, it's the same. Know what you're doing and practice it at all times. Stay on the safe side.
Clyde says that safety is like soul music. You've got to set the mood. You know what I mean? To groove with music, you've got to get the beat, right? That's how it is with safety. You get the feeling. Clyde stops and thinks safety long before the job starts. He swings with safety by wearing the right work clothes. The woods are a great place to work if you dress for it. Do you know why you wear smooth work trousers without cuffs? Sure. That's so you won't get hung up on branches and brush. And how about those work shoes? If you say you wear them because the supervisor said to, you're wrong. Work shoes save your feet. Men, you only get one pair. Of feet, that is. It's the same with gloves and hard hats. They make a tough guy even tougher where it really counts. Another way that Clyde gets in the safety mood is when he draws equipment and tools. Safety is having the right tool and in good condition. Clyde won't accept a tool that isn't safe to use. And he shows the tool man what's wrong so nobody else will use it. The most important thing about safety on the job is doing what you're told. When it comes to doing what Clyde is told, Clyde listens. Listen to a work leader. He'll tell it like it is.
Very good. Today we'll be talking about the Pulaski. It's a very good tool for firefighting, but it's sharp and it's heavy. Use it right and it'll do a good job for you, but use it wrong and you can be hurt badly. For some of you, this is the first time that you'll be using a Pulaski. So let's spend a few minutes seeing the right way, the only way to use it. First, I want each of you to look at the cutting edge of the Pulaski. Like an axe, it has a beveled edge. In other words, it has a sloping or slanting edge which makes the cutting point. Now, I've already told you that in carrying an axe or any sharp-edged tool, that the blade be held so that it's parallel to your leg with your hand close to the head. This way, if you stumble, the blade will not hit your leg. And I was pleased to see that when you came out here that you kept your distance of at least 6 feet between each one of you. In using an axe or any chopping tool, the first thing that you do is to have a firm footing. This is very important. Stand on solid ground with your feet spread apart like this. Then look around to see that no one is within 10 feet of you. To properly grip the handle of the Pulaski, place your left hand about 6 inches from the head of the Pulaski if you're left-handed, with the palm supporting the handle and the fingers holding it firmly in place, and your right hand about 6 inches from the end of the handle in this manner. If you're right-handed, it would be just the reverse. Pulaski used in grubbing for or cutting the roots of shrubs and small plants. Swing the tool so that your arms do the work. Work in the area directly in front of you and use short strokes like this. Never use your feet to hold what you're cutting because the Pulaski
may slip, cut your boot, and hurt your foot. Are there any questions?
No.
That means everybody knows how to use a Pulaski.
Yeah.
Okay, Clyde, you give us a demonstration.
Who, me?
That's right.
Listening pays off. Clyde will do it right and safely. Signs are put up for your safety. They help keep Clyde on the safe side. Just in case you think safety stops when you leave the Job Corps, meet Mr. J. Caldwell. He's a veteran bulldozer operator.
Get a good job takes know-how. You have to be able to prove you can do it. But to keep a job after you got it takes a real good safety record. Employers just can't afford to stay with guys who's careless about safety habits. First of all, accidents cost a lot of money. Even if nobody gets hurt, every accident means a loss of time on the job and probably a loss of a lot of valuable equipment. As far as I'm concerned, keeping up with safe practices is job insurance. When it comes to safety, I do what I'm told. Now let me show you a few of the things that we do around a construction site that makes jobs a lot safer for everybody concerned. I'll start here with my dozer. You may have noticed, before I got off, I lowered the blade and locked it in position. I locked the gear in the parking position so that this 20 tons of equipment can't go any place that it shouldn't. When I leave the dozer, even if it's for a few minutes, I close the throttle and lock it in position. As an added precaution against fire, I close the fuel line. Now let me show you around. Around every construction site where power equipment is being used, there's a lot of gasoline and fuel oil. For safety's sake, we keep gasoline well away from any building and as far away as practical from where the actual work is going on. There's a strict requirement that no smoking is to be done within 100 feet of the field dump. You have to remember, just one 5-gallon can of gasoline is equal in explosive power to 415 pounds of dynamite. That kind of a hazard, gasoline deserves the same respect that you'd give dynamite. When we refuel, we always wait at least 5 minutes for the engine of the equipment to cool, so that there's no danger of a fire from spillage. One thing we all do around a construction site is look for hazards. Anything that might endanger the worker or damage the equipment. Like this old bottle, for instance. It seemed to be harmless, but it could lead to a real serious accident. Bulldozer could run over it, break it into jagged pieces, and an unsuspecting man could receive a real nasty cut. Or the dozer track could pick it up so it could be thrown and hit someone. Of course, there are some dangers, say like a rock outcropping, that can't be removed so easily, and we're still on the lookout for those too. We let each other know where a hazard exists, and we'd mark it with a flag as a reminder until it can be blasted or dug out. Another thing we do is assign men to safety duty. But we don't leave the job of safety just to a few. Everybody works at safety. Along those lines, there's something that you can do, as long as you're in the Job Corps and as long as you work. And that is to nicely point out to the people you work with anything they do that isn't safe. Follow that rule of safety we started out talking about. Do what you are told. That's the way to keep a perfect safety record and to hold a good job.
There's one thing about Clyde that everyone agrees on. Clyde has a groovy sense of humor. He's sometimes very funny. Like there was the time Clyde got this idea to play a joke on his friend Jack, whose big deal was wearing hats. Jack had this new hat he was hung up on. Well, unknown to Jack, Clyde and his other friends got identical hats in different sizes and kept switching hats on Jack. Well, Jack about flipped when this started happening. He began to wonder what was happening to his head. The joke was good fun, and even Jack enjoyed it. But the thing was that nobody got hurt. That's one thing that Clyde would never do. Play a joke that's going to get somebody hurt. You see, safety goes on even when you're having fun. Take sports, for instance. Every year, many safety-minded people get hurt because they forget about safety. In play, as in work, safety is just plain common sense. Clyde knows that in sports, it's teamwork that wins. Teamwork means safety, too. You play it on the safe side by looking out for the other guy. Oh, there are times when Clyde is tempted to bean a guy he's down on. But playing fair and looking out for the other guy is part of the game. When it comes to batting, Clyde plays it on the safe side. A carelessly thrown bat could hurt a man. So Clyde is sure he drops the bat away from the other players. When Clyde slides, it's always feet first. That's common sense, too. And when it comes to running, Clyde does his best to avoid hitting other players. He plays hard, but he plays safe. To Clyde, looking out for the other guy is just as important as winning the game. Meet a man who knows plenty about winning and about sportsmanship. This is Don Buford, a top player for the Baltimore Orioles.
Say, fellas, do yourself a favor. Learn a lesson about safety. Too often, especially being so young and eager, the lesson doesn't sink in until it's too late. Some guys say safety is a matter of luck. The thing that made the Orioles the world champions in 1966 was more than the fact that they had great talent. Let's face it, the other teams had talent too. But what the Orioles did better than the others was practice until they were as good as their talent could make them. Plus, they developed teamwork. You have to practice to excel in safety too, and you need teamwork. You've been hearing that looking out for the other guy is a safety idea, but it also is the whole basis of sportsmanship. Let's say you're out shagging a few balls and two of you are going for the catch. It's smart ball and safe when playing and practicing for the closest man to call for the catch and the other guy to back up the play. That's teamwork at its best. Swimming, you should always pair up as a team. That way, if one guy gets in trouble, his partner can assist him or get help. As far as practice is concerned, you should learn whatever you do from competent supervisors. Coaches and instructors know the right way. For instance, a man learning to lift weights has to learn to use his back to do the work. The body is stronger when the backbone is straight up and down. The same thing applies in lifting anything. Sports, at home, or at work. And practice is the way you learn to do things like a profession. Practice is the way to develop teamwork too. You get so familiar with the way your teammates do things that you can anticipate every move they make. A team is more than several individuals doing things together. It's a relationship where the team works as one unit, with each man sharing the whole responsibility with every other man. When one man scores, they all score. Practice, teamwork, and looking out for each other, that's the way to play or to work safely. Take it from me, safety is worthwhile. It's just plain old good sense and a way to avoid painful results.
Safety isn't just some rules to learn. Safety is a way of doing things. Cale Yarborough told us that the first rule of safety is know what you are doing. The next thing you do to stay safe is to do what you are told. Remember, Don Buford said that the third way to safety is looking out for the other guy. The fourth step to safety is don't take chances. Watch Clyde. He's got a job to do. He wants to place those boards on the top rack, but it's hard to reach. Too high. Now, he could go and get the stepladder in the corner. However, that old chair's a lot closer. Before he gets himself in trouble, Clyde stops and thinks it over. That's another rule of safety. Never take chances. So you see, to keep on the safe side, there are 4 steps.
First step to safety is what it's about. Remember those 4 men and you'll make out. First step to safety is to know what you're doing. Using an axe or in the kitchen stewing. Second step to safety is doing what you're told. If you're a new man or even if you're old. Third step to safety, protect the other guy, so he'll be around to give another try. Fourth step to safety, takes all of the rest. If don't take chances and come on back. Fourth step to safety is what it's all about. Remember those 4 men and you'll make out.
Fire can be a friend or foe. All of us are familiar with the beneficial use of fire, and we're painfully aware of what can happen when it becomes an enemy. We have either witnessed or we have seen film of the damage and the suffering it can cause. We know that an act of carelessness, an untended campfire, or a discarded match or cigarette can transform beautiful landscape into a raging inferno. But few are aware of how fire as an enemy can literally change the world around us. How it can, like a pebble tossed into a lake, create ever-widening circles that disturb ecological patterns in nature's grand design. The film you're about to see is about fire. Fire, the third element. I believe it contains a message for everyone who is concerned about protecting and preserving the priceless gifts of nature. elements: earth, air, fire, water. Without any one of these, there could be no life, animal, vegetable, or human. This is the story of fire, its uses, comforts, and its savage power over man's environment. Our prehistoric ancestors regarded fire in wonder, fear, and often in worship. There was the fire that descended from the skies in the form of crashing electrical storms that shattered giant trees and started other fires that burned for days. And there were nights filled with terror when the sleeping volcanoes exploded. Centuries passed before man learned that sleeping near a fire kept away not only the night chill, but also the prowling wild animals. He even found that his meat tasted better when cooked, and that he got sick less often from eating it. Countless more centuries have gone by, and fire, in its many controlled forms, is now an essential part of daily living. But fire, like other forces of nature, can quickly change from a friend into a mortal enemy. Many factors, most of them man-caused, conspire to start fires in places and at times when there should be no fire. The careless recreationist, the child playing with fire, the engine exhaust, deliberate malicious incendiarism. All these contribute immeasurably to the environmental destruction which mankind can so ill afford. The past few decades have seen significant advances in fire control machinery and the techniques for using it. Near miracles have been performed in fire suppression and the consequent saving of lives and property. Yet, with all man's creative ingenuity and energy at work, there are times when fire, the enemy, is the undisputed victor in the battle. The long-term side effects of wildfires, whether in brushland or forested areas, can be even more ruinous than the chaos immediately apparent. There is, of course, the obvious visible destruction of timber resources. Although larger trees, such as redwood or Douglas fir, might appear externally to be undamaged, closer inspection may reveal fire scars which are an open entry to disease or decay. At the same time, the trees, weakened by the tremendous heat of the wildfire, become highly vulnerable to attack and possible destruction by tree-killing forest insects. The insect epidemic, leaving its trail of devastation, then spreads into adjacent, unburned timber areas. Groves of saplings and seedlings destined to provide trees for future generations are snuffed out en masse. Wild animals and birds are an essential part of the forest ecosystem. When a fast-moving wildfire sweeps through a wooded area, many hundreds of these small creatures are overtaken and killed. Those lucky enough to survive find their natural sources of food and shelter destroyed for seasons to come. Clouds of smoke and fine ash saturate the atmosphere and drift down into distant cities, causing eye and lung irritation. With the arrival of winter rains, the soil, depleted of its protective surface cover and root-holding structure, simply washes downhill. Structural foundations buckle and roiling mudslides batter everything in their path. Accumulated debris clogs sewers, culverts, and drainage ditches. Another after effect of a very hot wildfire is the formation of a hydrophobic or water-repellent layer of soil about 2 inches below the surface. This retards normal water percolation, accelerates the runoff, and adds to the downstream silt load. Streams and domestic drinking water supplies are contaminated, and fish spawning beds are damaged or destroyed. In the case of wildfire passing over very steep terrain, landslides can occur without the necessity of rainfall. Boulders rumble downhill, knocking loose soil and more rocks, and eventually triggering what may be termed a dry avalanche. But all these are only the short-term and immediately apparent effects. Other changes are less noticeable, but more profound, to the extent that the entire ecosystem of any area may be altered for decades. Certain species of trees, more fire-resistant than others, survive and propagate themselves. This, in time, changes the dominant timber stand characteristics of the entire forest. While some species of insects may follow a fire to scavenge on the dead or dying vegetation, other species may be wiped out entirely by a very hot fire. The birds that feed on these insects then migrate to other areas, further altering the ecological picture. Certain microorganisms essential to plant growth may be reduced in numbers or destroyed completely by the very high ground surface temperatures during a fire. Conversely, soil nutrients such as calcium, potassium, nitrogen, and phosphorus may be added in the form of ash from burned vegetation. Such soil changes directly affect the character of the post-fire regrowth. Some shrubs and undergrowth disappear entirely to be replaced by others more adaptable to the altered condition of the soil. This, in turn, causes a change in the type of wildlife dependent on the indigenous vegetation for survival. For example, undergrowth offering an ideal habitat for rabbits or quail might be too dense for deer or elk with their different foraging requirements. Thus, it becomes evident that sweeping wildfire may, over a relatively short time, wreak a total change in the ecological balance of an area even larger than the actual burnt acreage. Whether or not such transformation is for better or worse might depend on the viewpoint of the affected organism, whether it be a pine tree, snowshoe rabbit, or a mule deer.
Now that we've shown you some of the many facets of fire, we want to make it clear that when we talk about the destructive results of fire, we're referring to wildfire, fire that occurs usually through accident or carelessness at a bad time and in a bad place, a fire that is not under control. Our business is preventing this kind of fire whenever possible, and when it does occur, we must put it out. But this does not necessarily mean that fire in itself is all bad. When properly used and managed, and in the right time and place, fire can be a valuable tool in wildland management. Controlled fire is often an effective way of clearing land, but only on areas carefully selected and prepared in advance, at a time when uncontrolled spread is unlikely and when weather conditions do not cause air pollution, and where the land is planted or otherwise managed after the fire. Fire may also be useful in managing timberlands where our lumber is grown. After trees have been harvested, logging slash can be burned under careful control, removing large amounts of fuel and preventing future wildfires. Under the right conditions and circumstances, underbrush and other forest debris can be reduced without harming the live standing trees. The key to using fire and land management is care and experience in following these steps, carefully choosing the area on which fire will be used, planning and preparation by qualified personnel, selecting the right weather and fuel conditions, constructing adequate fire breaks in advance, and follow-up management after burning. All these are essential. Always keep in mind that any fire that gets out of control is a wildfire, even though it may have been started purposely and with the best of intentions. We who deal with wildfire are well aware that a fire doesn't care who or what it burns. Buildings will burn just as readily as brush.
The last 3 decades have seen a mass movement from city to suburbs. The result of this rapid emigration has been, in many cases, disaster. Fire protection problems in such suburban settlements are often compounded by lack of suitable access roads, inadequate water supply, and inadequate clearance between structures and surrounding vegetation. The outcome of such folly is frequently predictable. This wondrous natural phenomenon that we call fire is many things to many people. It is creature comfort, gourmet food, and industrial might. It can also be heartbreak, tragedy, and lasting environmental pollution or destruction. With a mushrooming population and the rapidly increasing use of wildland areas for recreation, wildfires will become even more of a challenge during the generations to come. Learn to know this third element. Use it wisely and carefully.